Welcome, everybody. My name is Marya. I am working here at CCmath in the Departments of Science and Support. And I am really excited to talk to you about the mathematics of balancing allotment and allowance. So let's dive into it. Today, we'll talk about what those two terms actually especially we're focusing on the workforce management side of things. We'll look at how to approximate time-off deductions for people who have flexible work patterns when there is no schedule yet. And we'll have a look at how to calculate allowance while accounting for uncertainty. But again, I will explain all these terms in just a second. So what is exactly allotment? Allotment is how much time does a call center agent or any employee get to take for holidays or any other leave. So it answers the question of how much time do I own to take off? We can think about this in terms of like the agent's time off balance. In of the year, usually they get some balance, or it's in the end of the year, and then they can spend some of that when they are requesting time off. And allowance, on the other hand, is a more business side term. It's about the capacity that the contact center can afford, or any business really. So this is about how much time off can we approve right now while satisfying our service targets. And we'll talk about both of these today. Okay, so let's start with a very simple example. We have a contact center. In the contact center, we have an agent, Lucy. She is a full-time employee. She works very normally from Monday to Friday, 8-hour shifts. And she requests some time off for Monday and Tuesday of some week in the future where we don't know the schedule yet. How much should we deduct from her allotment? I'd love to hear your suggestions in the chat. Again, she works full-time, has a 40-hour contract, works 8 hours a day, 16 hours, somebody is saying. That's absolutely correct. 16 hours, that's quite straightforward, thank you. Now, let's look at a different example. Or yes, we see here 2 days of 2 by 8. Yeah, 16 hours, exactly. Thank you for people who answered. Now let's have a look at a different example. We have a part-time agent, Mark, and he works 20 hours a week and flexible working patterns. So it's not always the same. It's not always fixed. Sometimes he can work 4 hours in a day, sometimes 8. So he requests exactly the same situation. He wants Monday and Tuesday off, but the week is not scheduled. So actually, we don't know when he's going to work yet. In this situation, how many hours should I plan to deduct from him, from his allotment? Do you have any ideas? I see, okay, depends on the labor law, depends on the agreement. He could do 20 hours in the remaining 3 days, or deduct none. You can schedule his 20 hours on the other days. Okay, these are all very nice suggestions. Here we're thinking about the situation where we are not looking into scheduling yet. So we want to check his allotment quickly and see if we can approve his request. And in this case, maybe this is quite far, and we are not going to be necessarily opening our schedule and planning the days when he is not planning to work. But thank you for your suggestions. I also see here 8 hours. Now, let's have a look at this simple approximation. If he works 20 hours in 5 work days, that means he works about 4 hours for each day. And then 4 multiplied by 2 is 8, exactly like a lot of you suggested in the chat. So now I will check if I can deduct 8 hours for Mark's allotment to quickly see if I can approve his request. I know now that Mark usually works his 20 hours over Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Something extra information that I have as a planner. And of course, this is more common than working 4 hours every day in general. So was this reduction accurate for Monday and Tuesday? Not so much, probably, but it really depends. Like a lot of you suggested, it depends how many hours does he work on Tuesdays, on Mondays, etc. Now let's consider a smarter way to do this. We do that by considering our knowledge of Mark's availability. And we know that usually his schedule only changes significantly about every 2 months. His working pattern is flexible, but of course it's not completely random. It's very rare that agents work randomly, sometimes on Mondays, sometimes on Tuesdays. It usually follows a pattern. So we will incorporate this using this example. There's a lot going on the slide, so let's have a look at everything slowly. You see in the table the number of hours worked on a certain weekday for a certain week. So in this case, we would like to look 4 weeks into the past. In the past 4 weeks, how many hours did he work on each workday? And we can see in this table that he works usually about 4 hours on Tuesday, but again, it's not always the same. Sometimes it's 2. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Mondays usually doesn't work. At the bottom, we have the average calculated. And now, pretty straightforward, but what should I plan to deduct from Monday and Tuesday then? Four hours. Okay, that's an interesting suggestion. We see that 3.5 is the average. So we can, we don't actually know. Maybe in the week that he's asking for, he will also again ask 2 hours or work 2 hours, maybe 4. So in this example, we are looking at the average in order to smooth out these variations. And therefore, he is going to, we can deduct 3.5 hours. Okay, I see here some person says still none if it's based on a Dutch 0-hour contract. Well, Mark has a 20-hour contract, so he has to work 20 hours a week. Yeah, and with this example, we get to 3.5 hours can be deducted, or this is the number against which we should check whether we can approve his request. Because of course, later when the time comes for the week in which we're on vacation, we will see what the actual schedule looks like, but it is very likely that the schedule will look very similar to what we see over here, and therefore our deduction will be will need less correction, so to say. Okay, so why is this better than the first? Why is this better than the first method? It's first of all rooted in the data that we have. So instead of just assuming that the agent works equally his or her contract hours over the week, we say, okay, let's look at their working pattern and then deduct an average. And using an average also, again, smoothes the variability in their working pattern. It's pretty easy to implement in software. We just calculate the averages. It's very nice and easy to use when you want to automatically get a certain understanding whether you can approve somebody's time off. And once the schedules are published, you need to make smaller adjustments to the actual allotment deductions. I see somebody is suggesting to talk to Mark. Do we want to work less hours that week? That's indeed a very nice idea. And I think that's useful to do in many contact centers. But imagine if you have, let's say, 1,000 agents, then maybe talking to every one of them could not work for some companies. So we are really here considering like an automated way to approve requests when you want to do that at scale. How can he get to the 20 hours next week's? Some hours will be taken out of his allotment, and that's the hours that he is given in the beginning of the year or the end of the year. He has a certain number of hours that he can spend as his time off, and therefore he doesn't have to work these hours over the next weeks. Okay, and of course, gathering more data, I see as some people suggest here, is the best. The more data you have, the better it is. Yeah. And also, in this case, we talked about the look back window, or more in the past slides. Here we can see in the last 4 weeks, the look back window. What do we mean here? This is, how many weeks back do we look to get this average? And it's important to tune it correctly, because if you take a longer window, then the average becomes more reliable, because any variability is smoothed out and you get more accurate numbers. However, if you take the window too large, and for example, Mark used to work a lot on Mondays and Tuesdays in, let's say, autumn, and now it's winter and he works mostly on Fridays, then the averages will make no sense. So it's really important to understand the structure of your organization, and the questions you can ask is, how often do availability patterns of agents change? How drastic are the changes, etc. And with that, we conclude the topic of allotment for today, and moving on to allowance. So now, to refresh a little bit, allowance is about the business. Allotment was very centered on the agent and very individual. So every agent gets a certain number of hours to deduct for their holiday request, for example. And allowance is about the business. How much time off can we afford to approve in a certain period while satisfying service targets? So it's all about managing uncertainty and satisfying the targets while also letting some people go and take their time off. It is definitely not a fixed percentage of staff, and not a daily or weekly cap, and not a yes or no switch. But what is it? We define it as a buffered comparison between the required staff given by the forecast and available staff. The forecast is uncertain, because no matter how well we're trying to predict the future, of course, we cannot be certain that the offered volume of calls will be exactly as it is in reality, as well as the handling time, etc. And of course, the available staff is not guaranteed. Some people may get sick, some people may be late, etc. So therefore, we have to make sure these are buffered in order to protect the service targets. Let's have a look at this very simple example, naive allowance. By the way, in this part of the webinar, we are really focusing on the mathematical problem where we have just full-time employees, to simplify it and to understand this part of the equation. So we have only full-time employees, and required staff, or our forecast tells us we need 50 people. And we have 54 people available. By naive logic, we can say, okay, well, then 4 people can take time off. And why is that a bad idea? I think, as a lot of you may guess. Well, actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Why would it be a bad idea? Unexpected training, sick, ad hoc, time off. Okay. No buffer for incidental shrinkage, absenteeism, redundancy, sick, traffic, all wonderful suggestions. Thank you very much. And exactly, yeah, you're right. We have shrinkage, we have absenteeism, which is, we have lateness. Also, sometimes forecast is not exactly correct. Well, there's always going to be a little bit of wiggle room with the forecast. And if we let those 4 people just take time off, our service levels become fragile. So they break easily. They sometimes you have 1 person out of the 50 that is required is sick, and therefore the targets are not met anymore. So it's crucial to, of course, buffer for this uncertainty. And our allowance comes from the available minus the required minus this uncertainty buffer. And the typical are the forecast, so volume versus average handling time, error, again, absence and lateness, adherence, and all of that is based on historical volatility. And the more data you gather about these areas, the more accurately you can actually protect the service targets when calculating the buffer. We can have a little mini example in this case. 108 hours is the amount of time total agent hours is available. We have required of 104 and buffer of 4 hours in this case. And you can imagine that perhaps you shouldn't be letting people go on vacation in this case, especially if we are talking about a moment with higher risks, etc. Now you might ask, how do we actually calculate the buffer? And unfortunately, I cannot provide a very easy formula. It's complex. It requires to account for multiple sources of uncertainty. As we discussed, there is many things that affect. There can be this errors in the forecast, the variability in adherence, etc., etc. And all of these things, they may come from different distributions, and each have different variabilities. And when you want to account for all of them, it becomes important to apply these mathematical models, which is often, well, which a lot of scheduling software is based on. And this what leads me to CCmath, where we actually use this to calculate the scheduled, and we take account of the buffer. We account for that buffer, for that uncertainty when calculating the schedules in order to protect the service levels. Rounding up, as I think we all understand, it's very important to balance allotment and allowance to get the best results for both employees and the organization. Employees get fairer time off requests, approvals, and the organization gets their service targets protected. So very important topics. If you are interested in learning more, please follow our training programs. We have them on forecasting, staffing, Erlang, etc. And on the screen, you see the website and where you can reach out. And of course, CCmath tooling is also something that feel free to check out. That's it for me. If you have any more questions, please Please let me know in the chat. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Short session this time.
Yes.
I see some interesting questions in the chat. So perhaps you can look at that, Marya. There's Sebastian and also Koos. And I think it's about the relation, what you just said about this buffer indeed and real-time management.
Yes. Okay, so I see the question. So you have to know how sensitive your KPIs are to perturbations. Also, sometimes you have to accept bad KPIs due to people taking time off. Definitely, yes, but also depends very much on the contact center, of course. The more people you have, the less affected you can make your KPIs from these people taking time off with proper scheduling. And yes, definitely, some KPIs are more sensitive than others. And it's very good to know your data. Now, another question is, yeah?
No, I think what is important is the difference. I mean, real-time management, canceling a training, for example, or, well, as Coach suggests, suggesting that sometimes you do not meet your service level. It's different from the availability. So I think this buffer is more about the availability before scheduling than having a buffer while scheduling. Am I right, Marya?
I think yes, that makes a lot of sense, totally.
Yeah. So it's not about overstaffing. It's about making sure you can make the right schedule, and every schedule should contain enough flexibility to deal with the fluctuations in the end. But upfront, you should, have fluctuations that occur before that, like indeed agents getting ill. And so if you don't have that buffer, you cannot even make a good schedule. So I think that is the bottom line of having this the thinking about allowance and not letting too many people take holiday leave such that you cannot make your schedule anymore.
Precisely. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. We're talking about more protecting our, let's say, future schedules, making sure we will have enough people. Okay, another question. Is this buffer similar to schedule inflexibility, which serves as buffer in the capacity plan, taking into consideration schedule constraints? I would say yes. This is generally, I'd say they can overlap. The more things you can take into account for the buffer, the better, of course. And some of them are definitely included. So Claudia asks, because of all the variabilities able to affect staff forecast, I usually use a ratio I determine to be acceptable within my forecasted shrink. For example, if my forecasted shrink is 25%, then I usually use around 10% of time off. What do you think? Perhaps you, Her, would like to share your thoughts on this?
I'm still trying to understand. If your forecast to shrink is 25%, then I usually use around 10% to time off. trying to, I mean, is this at the scheduling or in advance? If your forecast shrinkage is 25%, then of course you should plus your Erlang calculations with this 25%. So that is really at the scheduling level. And then what you're talking about, Marya, is adding an additional, let's say, making sure that you have enough availability to meet this target. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk further about this, Claudia, please contact us and let's have a chat about this, because these are indeed complicated things to decide upon. Ravi, schedule flexibility is the way to schedules are schedule in a flexibility is the yeah that's yet another thing. Schedule I'm asking George, or you said, is this buffer similar to schedule interview? Well, I would say, if I am allowed to answer, Marya, that schedule inflexibility has to do with the fact that you're really at the scheduling level, that that there are certain holes in your requirements that you cannot, that you feel have, where you cannot follow exactly your schedule. Yes, so schedule inefficiency is something that, just like shrinkage, you should take into account when making your schedule. And then what Marya says, the allowance should allow you to make this schedule, which already includes shrinkage and the schedule inefficiency. On top of that, when allowing people to go on holiday, you should have some additional room buffer to allow to make your schedule. Yeah? So I think that is these are really two different things. And what Hans Joachim says about sick rate. Sick rate is also sick rate is normally already in there, but sick rate is not a constant. You have a sick rate of, let's say, 5%. But then one day it's 4%, the next day it's 6%. So if you calculate with 5%, then half of the time there are more people sick than you expected, and you cannot make your schedule. So therefore, you need the buffer that Marya talked about. Yeah, I think that is the main issue here at stake. But thanks for asking these questions, because that makes it clear how to position this what we're talking about. Yes, so it has all to do with variability and how to deal with that. Yes, so a very difficult and interesting subject, I think.
Indeed, thank you very much for your questions. See. I see that there is not much more coming in. Well, this was a little bit of a shorter webinar. Thank you very much for joining today, and we hope to hear from you again. And have a lovely rest of the day.
Yeah. Also from my side, thanks for joining, and thanks, Marya. It's always a challenge to do this for the first time, but you did a nice job. So thanks for presenting this to us, and thank you all for joining.